we
Yeah.
can start from the beginning. So your first your first works was Archaeology is a Brand, which has been a very important book even in Italy, because it was distributed by Archeopress, which is the same editing house of EXNOVO, but it's even very widespread in Italian archaeology. So it's been a very important book for every one of us, and even for public archaeology in Italy. So we were curious to know if there has been some changes between the 2007 and now, in your opinion, in the between archaeology and the society, if you can see any changes, or the situation is absolutely the same as it was 13 or 14 years ago.
Yeah, thanks. It's a good question. Maybe this time to revisit this this issue. I haven't obviously done the same amount of research since then on this topic compared to what I did before. But from what I sort of gather and what I see in the media and in the public domain generally, I don't see a huge difference to what I described in the book. There are many more examples, of course, now, but the basic themes, the detective, the adventurer, they are still with us. I think very much in many different contexts, and the other ones, they are still of a lesser significance. That the manager who takes care of things and the archaeologist who reveals new truths and insights into history and maybe the world even. That's also still there, but not as important as the other two fields. But what maybe I would say that, but it's slightly, it's not exactly the same topic. It's to the side of it. Is that I think we do see that the heritage discourse is changing dramatically and has been over the last decades also. So really the identity politics have become so important, and it's ever more important who owns a particular item of heritage and who decides on what's going on in that respect. So I think that has become the whole idea of representation, of how heritage represents different groups and who governs over heritage. I think that's become ever more significant. It's not exactly the topic you were asking me about,
no.
but it's sort of related, maybe you could say. So that's definitely a trend I see.
Okay. So about the same topic in a way. Me and my colleague and friend Maya Gori faced it many times for different reasons. The question of pseudo-archaeology, which is very rich even in Italy. It's called the fonte archeologia from us. And we started from the opinion of many of you who faced the same topic in many papers and many works, and we noticed that your opinion is very different from it's normal, because you started from Archaeology as a Brand, obviously, which is it has a very strong theory in the back. So you said in that paper you don't want to be a crusader against the pseudo-archaeologists just because the war is over. They're winning the war just because they're better than archaeologists in communicating archaeology, which was probably the same situation we find, me and Maya, for example, in some of our pseudo-archaeologists, which were very good communicators. They had a very good meeting even with the communities over the territory. So they were very better than archaeologists in communication. Do you think how how we archaeologists can improve our capacity, our skills in communication and with society and with the mass, with the public. How can we do, you think?
Yeah, there are lots of different issues in that question. I guess I would start by questioning your use of the term pseudo-archaeology, because that already means you have a particular position. It sort of makes clear what is the real archaeology and who is sort of the imitator. I think another term which I've been using is alternative archaeologists. Which at that time, this was well before alternative facts. But I guess it's a similar use of the term, that there is a different discourse, a different universe of archaeology in that sense, where people operate according to different standards and in different ways. And I think the point, as you said, I'm not advocating to go on crusades like many people do, or many of my colleagues do. But I think the challenge is to understand what it is they're doing and why they're doing what they're doing. And I think one can learn a lot about not just what it means to these individuals, but also what archaeology means in society. Because they often, as you say, they often get a lot of response in the newspapers or in television, or there are lots of documentaries like this, which one can watch. So there's definitely some sort of appetite for the sorts of stories which they present. And I think that's what we should learn about in order to understand what archaeology is actually about. I've long thought that the people who least understand what archaeology is about are the archaeologists themselves, because they think it's about chronology and artifacts and different cultures and so on. Yeah. And maybe that's what it is about for them, but it's not what it is about in society. And for that, I think you need to just get a bigger view of how society deals with archaeology and where it emerges and what role it plays. And alternative archaeology is one field where I think that becomes clear. That's what I think is a very important area of study where we can learn something important that informs the way we ourselves as professional archaeologists act in society. But I would also say that the way you introduced the question, it's not, I wouldn't see this as some sort of competition, us against them. I mean, ultimately we're in the same business. We need each other more than we can do without each other. And so many of these alternative archaeologists, what they want most of all is recognition. So I'm sure every archaeologist who makes a living from that professionally remembers somebody emailing or calling or meeting somebody who just wants to be appreciated for what they're doing, even though the ideas are very strange and certainly not academic. So there's a very deep human desire to be accepted. So I think we should also recognize the human dimension in all this. So it's not a fight where one wins and somebody else loses. I think we're in this together, and we are colleagues of sorts. Obviously not working according to the same standards and not publishing in the same journals or other outlets. But still in the same business in archaeology in society. And related to that, I think the outcome or the aim of archaeology is not necessarily to communicate to the rest of society what it is we're doing, how good we are, and how everybody should understand all the achievements that academic archaeologists have, and all professional archaeologists have made over the years. But I think we should focus more on what I call applied archaeology, on what archaeology does in society. And it has a number of important functions. For example, tourism is big in Italy, but it's big in many places. And that is important for local populations, for businesses, but it's also an opportunity to learn something about how other people lived under very different circumstances in the past. It's an opportunity to meet other tourists, to make contacts between people from different countries or different places, different interests, and so on. And if you look at these sort of functions of archaeology, the archaeology as a process, so to speak, what it does in society, then you find that the distinction between professional archaeologists and alternative archaeologists is often very small. And there are a number of people who've been on both sides of the fence at different times.
That's true.
Yeah,
I have some names in my mind. Yeah.
There are some famous names, yeah, and we provide similar services to other people in society. So I think that is what we should focus on. What do we share? Because it's so much. And the differences that we express ourselves in different ways, that we have access to different methodologies, and we have different skills, and that's also true, but I think that's not the most important part of this relationship. So that's why I'm, I guess, advocating for relativization, you call it that is, of alternative archaeology, and we should see it in relation to what they do and who they are, and how much they share with us as professional archaeologists.
Okay, so we're coming to the last topic of this interview, if you want. It's very interesting, as I said, the existence, the creation of GRASCA, so Graduate School of Contract Archaeology, which is for archaeologists, Italian archaeologists who will probably don't know what it is. It's inside the Linnaeus University, where Professor Holtorf is teaching. There is this course in graduation. It's a post-graduation course. I think they are all PhD and post-PhD.
Yes.
From that.
All PhD.
Which has been created to join, in a way, academics, academic archaeology and contract archaeology. So I was curious to understand how you think is working this experience, and if you think with different ways, with different can be exported in different situations with different systems, for example.
Yeah, this is GRASCA is a pretty unique collaboration. I don't know any other example in Europe, or in fact outside of Europe.
I don't think.
And it was created also under very specific circumstances in Sweden 6 years ago now, when we started with that. And it's actually based on a collaboration between 5 companies in contract archaeology in Sweden and our university, and then and a major funder, a big foundation, state foundation in Sweden that supports the projects, including such industrial business research school, industrial research schools that are aimed at increased competitiveness of Swedish businesses. So that's the aim. Many countries have such foundations or state support, because in the sort of market economy in which we live, there's a lot of attention to and a lot of support available to increase competitiveness of industry and different branches of companies. And that's not normally an area where the humanities have much to gain. Because normally we don't work under these circumstances, and we have a different role to play, and there are no big companies in our field. But this foundation in Sweden is aimed at all disciplines, and it is important for them also to show that they don't just do technology and business studies and informatics and so on, but they want to spread their resources widely. That's part of what they're supposed to be doing. And so we heard about this, and we figured that, well, actually archaeology does work competitively on a market, and it does that in many countries of Europe after the Malta Convention, when commercial archaeology started. And so there is certainly a sector, and in Sweden it's worth about 30 million euros per year. The size of the sector. It's probably bigger than in Italy must be bigger because it's a much bigger country. We have 10 million inhabitants. There's a lot of development going on, and then you know how it works. Then they get contracts to do the archaeology in it. So within that scheme, we have a market. We have companies who are competing like in any other market with different offers for jobs that are going. And that means we qualified for this support. So about just less than half, something like 40% of the entire budget is paid for by this foundation. And that's very important because otherwise there wouldn't have been the money to do that. Yeah. And PhD students in Sweden are expensive because they get a full salary. They're not students, they're employees and all benefits. So the salaries are high in Sweden also. So it would have been impossible. In fact, we do not have any other PhD students than those because it's too expensive. Right. So one is the funding, but another precondition was, of course, that we have a joint agenda with these companies we're collaborating with. And that we also have because Swedish contract archaeology is obliged not just to take care of the finds and do the rescue in place, but part of their remit is also to do research about what they find and to publish this research in the normal academic context. So they publish papers in all the main journals. They attend conferences like we do. They publish with the same publishers. So all of this they already do. And I know that's not the case in all European countries. The system is very different. Yeah. But in Sweden, it is the case. So they do not need any additional training in how to do research because that they know. And they're already doing it. And there isn't really a major problem with that. It works quite well. So the one area where GRASCA lies and where we make a contribution to the development of contract archaeology and increase its competitiveness is the area of the relations between archaeology and society. So at the moment, what they do is that they publish their results and then they try to do some outreach. They give lectures or guided tours or exhibitions, all these sort of things, which I know is quite common in many places. But what we try to develop and what our PhD students in this research group, what they are doing is trying to extend the scope of the applications of archaeological knowledge in society. So they're trying to broaden the market, as it were, so that there are additional customers which will increase the demand for archaeology. And in that kind of thinking, that will mean that we will create additional jobs in archaeology. It's these are most of the. In fact, I don't know any example for companies in Swedish contract archaeology that are in it to make profit. This is not risk capital. These are often small companies. These are museums that have a side of contract archaeology. In one case, it's a foundation that is not attached to a museum, but it works in a similar way. And they are investing. If they make profits, they're investing it and creating new opportunities for archaeologists to do. So with them, we agreed that there are certain areas where we can, or their employees, some of them, our students, they could do some research in order to find out exactly how could new services be provided that reach new markets and that way help these companies to grow. And that's the task of the PhD students. So it does require a system where sort of the research side is already under control, so to speak. Already normal that a lot of research is conducted in contract archaeology, and where there is a scope to expand and go into new areas. And that's I think where our capacity and our competence at the university could offer some knowledge and some approaches on what to investigate and how to go about that. And we're now 5.5 years old, and the first PhD student actually will finish in a few months. And And then there are several others lined up for the rest of the end of the year or early next year. And then over the next 2 years, there will be more. There are 9 in total. And the first one, for example, she's a human osteologist. And what she's been doing, and we think there's every reason to have hope that this will lead to some interesting development in Swedish contract archaeology. So her focus has been on developing the field of forensic archaeology in Sweden. Now that's the sort of archaeology that helps the police, for example, with detective work on murder cases. And you've probably seen some documentaries on that.
No. But we have one even in Italian archaeologist who is working on that kind of topic. So I know.
Yeah, and it's quite big in the UK, for example.
Yeah, forensic archaeology. Yeah.
Yeah, it started some decades ago, and they've made huge advances. But in Sweden, it doesn't exist at the moment. It's sort of down to individual employees who have some interest in archaeology, or there are also a few archaeologists who have worked with the police before in various circumstances, but it's not done in a sort of professional, structured way. And she's the person who, and her employer, which is a museum in the west of Sweden, they are trying to change that in various ways. And this is what is the main outcome of her research. So we'll have to see exactly how this will play out and what will come out of it. But certainly the starting position is a good one. She's already well known in the right police circles, and she's been on national television, and is very successful in promoting these ideas.
Well, so, in France, there is even the Vargas books are about, in a way, archaeologists who are, in a way, using their knowledge, their skills in police cases. So it's very common, very interesting topic. What is very interesting about GRASCA, I think, is the interest about from these small companies in developing new ways of doing archaeology. This is very interesting because they choosing to invest money in archaeology, in new kind of use of archaeology. This is very, very interesting, but it's very different from we are usually seeing in Italian, but in general in European archaeologies, where companies are just involved in surveying to commercial archaeology and to development-led archaeology. And this is very interesting. I think it's an interesting model to be, in a way, to be studied, even with different.
It does require a particular kind of leader in these companies. And we're lucky that we are collaborating with some of these companies that have that sort of leadership, where they invest in well, it's a form of staff development and capacity building, but it's also an investment in future projects and opening up new markets. So it does make commercial sense also. Yeah. But I have to say, I mean, we could have taken in a few more PhD students than we did, and even because we couldn't find more companies here either.
Yeah, I know.
So the challenges are similar everywhere, and not every company either wants to go that way or is able to do that way, because it does need some funding. And it is difficult.
I think, in this moment in particular, with development in a way stopped even by COVID crisis, and in general by the economic crisis, which is coming from 2008. So we are not in Italy. We are not out of that crisis. We are probably coming out of that crisis in this moment. So it's very interesting to see how archaeology will change in the next years. Thank you very much, Dan. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So see you, and thank you even by big thank you even by Italian archaeologists who will be watching this this recording next week or in 2 weeks. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Good luck.
Bye bye. Bye bye.
Bye bye.